Namaste everyone, namaste, namaskar. Welcome to Vichar Manthan. And it's got a really exciting question we've got for you today, this evening, where we're going to be asking the crucial question, is marriage dying? My name is Kishan Bhatt, and I'm part of the Vichar Manthan Central London team. So Vichar Manthan, what is Vichar Manthan? Vichar Manthan is a Sanskrit phrase meaning to churn ideas. Vichar Manthan for short has had active chapters here in London, Leicester, West London, Nottingham, and we have had emerging chapters starting off in several locations across the country. Vichar Manthan is a platform to explore the challenges facing our British society on the whole, through a Hindu civilization and a lens. Ultimately, we at Vichar Manthan believe that there is much wisdom that can be unlocked from our own Hindu culture. And if engaged with earnestly, with an earnest lens, we can apply it to solve many of our crucial challenges in modern British society in the 21st century. So Vichar Manthan is a voluntary organisation where sharp minds come onto the platform to explore challenges that we face in modern Britain. We have explored everything from the welfare state to exploring the issues surrounding the legislation of prostitution in this country, to animal rights and education. Vichar Manthan truly is a platform to explore all the challenges through a Hindu lens. To find out more, please do visit our website and our social media platforms. Our website is vicharmanthan.org. So the question we are exploring tonight is marriage dying? Tonight we want to be focused on understanding what is this institution that we call marriage? What purpose does it serve? How does this institution compare and contrast when looking at modern notions of marriage? And most importantly and fundamentally, can Dharma in any way offer us any insight into how, if at all, we ought to reconstruct this institution? What we are not exploring tonight is the politics surrounding marriage and recent legislation. We are asking fundamental questions in order to better understand what it is that we are talking about in the first instance. Now, without delaying tonight's event any longer, let me introduce you to our chairperson, Devika Jinnah. Devika has recently joined our Vichar Manthan team and very privileged to have her as part of our team. Devika has completed a degree in Bachelor of Arts in Philosophy at the University of London and a Master's in the Study of Religion in the University of Oxford, and also a Programme and Project Management course at Warwick University. She now works in corporate social responsibility and communications, part of business in the community, which is led by Prince Charles. So please welcome Devika Jinnah. And Devika, thank you.
It's also my great honour to introduce our speaker for this evening, Professor Navalkant Brinja, and he will be speaking to us about our gargantuan question tonight, is marriage dying? Kishanji has already kind of given you some thoughts on what we will be discussing today and what exactly it is that we're trying to pick apart. But to give you some facts and figures to chew on, let me paint a picture of what marriage looks like in the UK. So the latest figures show that there were just under 250,000 wedding ceremonies in the UK, and it was almost double that figure back in 1972. Religious marriages account for just under a third of all weddings in the UK, and divorce is stubbornly high, with 45% of all weddings ending in divorce, and most of those end before couples reach their 10th anniversary. And now to introduce you to Navalkant Brinja, who will be talking to us about this subject. He is a nuclear physicist, and he's been in the field for many years. He is also an honorary professor of 3 universities, Aberdeen, Brunel and Bolton. And the other feather in his cap is that he's trained in conducting Hindu wedding ceremonies, which obviously makes him our expert witness for this evening. But before we dive into the subject, I'd like to ask all of you some questions, just to get to know you all a little bit better. So please raise your hands if you are married. Oh wow, quite a few of you. Okay, great. And how many of you would like to be or are looking to in the next 5 years, let's say? Okay, a few. Okay, cool. And how many of you have no interest in getting married whatsoever? Oh, this is awkward. Come on. Finally, I'm going to go through the structure of this evening. So, first of all, Professor Neville Gantji will be giving his reflections on our question, and then I will be asking him some questions, and then we will also be inviting our reflectors, Sumitji and Gantji, who is just there, to reflect on what Professor Neville Gantji has said and give their thoughts on the subject. And then finally, we'll have the floor open to you to ask your questions to the panel, and then we will close the event. So without further ado, Professor Neville Gantji, over to you.
Thank you, Devika ji. Namaste, good evening, everyone. And thank you, Kishan ji, as well. But I think the biggest thanks must go to Sachin Nanda, because he came to Manchester and he roped me into giving this talk. And very cleverly, he picked the day when my wife is in India. So I can today feel free and say whatever I want to say about marriage. When I mention the word Dharma, I know you've said it's a nebulous term because often not clearly translated in English. I mean natural laws. Nothing to do with any religion. You can, of course, the concept of Dharma came from the Hindu tradition, so you can call it Hindu Dharma. Because laws are eternal, you can call it Sanatan Dharma, Hinduism, that's your choice. But I am going to base or give you a dharmic view of marriage. Many things that we know of today about marriage, and this beautiful picture also tells you that, are actually nothing to do with dharma or natural laws. They are mostly social traditions. They were different many, many thousand years ago, and they are changing, continuously changing. Even today they are changing. I can say that for certain because I have had honor of conducting marriage ceremonies, and I do come across all kind of requests from families. Oh, look, we are going to be doing this. Can we do this? I said, fine. As long as we can do what I call the sanskar, the sacrament part of it. Rest are all traditions. You do what you want to do. So many problem issues that have starting to arise in the marriage, which is giving us the impression that marriage is dying. As you heard, these figures, I guess, are for UK. So it's not entirely Hindus, but I guess, divorce rates are up. And they must be up in India, wherever, predominant Hindu so groups live. But our concern is that institution of marriage is breaking up. It is getting out of date. But in reality, and this is the point I want to make to you today, that we as a society are actually moving away from the real purpose of marriage. It's like, other day somebody was cracking a little joke about they engaged some workers to paint the line in the middle of the road, and first day they painted 1 mile, the second day half a mile, the third day only quarter of a mile. So the manager says, your performance is going down year by year, day by day. And they said, what can we do, sir? The paint box is getting further and further. Dip, run, paint, dip. This is what really is happening with us as well. We have been actually moving away as a whole group, as a whole society. And I just want to enunciate today and bring back or refresh your minds about what actually is the dharmic view of marriage. Okay? It is a relationship between two individuals, that's easy. But relationship for what? And this is really where we forget. So let me make it very, very clear that in our dharmic view, it is said, and it is actually universally, even scientifically true, that the two opposites have to come together to create the third. Let me explain the concept of Shiva and Shakti. Yeah, very simple example, the light bulb. The power in it is electricity. But can you see it, taste it, touch it, feel it? Is it tangible? Not at all. You need a wire, a bulb, a filament, yeah, to make this electricity manifest itself. Electricity is definitely the power, but the bulb is the power holder. Electricity is the Shakti and the bulb is the Shiva. The two have to be there. Electricity on its own couldn't have given you this light unless there was the wire, the bulb, and the filament. One is tangible, practical, other intangible. Yeah? These two have to come together. This is the idea. And then at an individual level, I said it is a relationship between two individuals because they need to fulfill their duties, and there are 5 great duties. I wouldn't go into all the detail. Duty towards the God, towards the society, towards your ancestors, towards the coming generation, towards the nature, towards the very country, the society that you live in. You know, all this a single individual may not be able to till this combination takes place. And in doing that, in this relationship, and this is also very, very important, that our dharmic view about life is that the life exists at 3 levels. The first, at very raw physical level, phenomenal, you know, we know that, this is my body, you know, and then, of course, at an emotional level. We have our body, eyes to see, ears to hear, and when we observe, when we interact, it creates emotions in us, good, bad, love, hate, whatever else. So based on those emotions, which are of course created by the mind, the body reacts. Then the mind gets new input, it reacts, and we call it life. But in our dharmic view, they said no. Please look at beyond the body and beyond the mind. And we call it the Atma. Roughly in English they call it soul, but I rather avoid that. And it talks about the spiritual forces, the spiritual life. Physical, emotional, spiritual. And here comes the beauty. The relationship that is talked about as marriage must connect at all 3 levels, because the body, the physical, is transient. We are continuously changing. Every second, if there's any medical person here, will tell you that our body, the cells are getting changed. In fact, the entire body, physical body, gets overhauled every few years. And yes, it will get old, it may get diseased. So body is changing. And emotions, I don't have to tell you, your mood swings. You know, they come and go. But the spirit in you, the Atma, is constant. That does not change. It's never born, it never dies. It is that constant in you. This is important. So what the dharmic view says is that for a true relationship, for a permanent relationship, don't just connect at the physical, don't just connect at the emotional, because they are transient. If one breaks, relationship goes. Connect also. I'm not saying ignore the body, please. Physical is important, is as important. And so are the emotions. But you must connect at the third level, the spiritual level. And this is really what a dharmic vivaha sanskar is actually designed to instill. But I see marriages where huge sums of money is spent. There is more money spent on bottles of wine on each table than the money they will give to a poor pandit who actually conducts the wedding. And no wonder they get a raw deal. I mean, I saw one wedding ceremony. The panditji came, okay, you have half an hour, that's fine, And he made them go around 7 times. And Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya, said something. Nobody paid an attention. And definitely not the bride and the groom. There were no messages given, no understanding whatsoever. And this is the sad part. So if you look at the marriage today, this is our Indian or Hindu traditional or modern sort of a marriage. I would say that there are many things which have actually become distorted, moved away from what it was meant to be. Yeah, some ideas as well. Like you will see that it's often shown in Bollywood movies. Husband is to be treated as God. It's male dominated. Yeah, Pati Parameshwar. You've heard of this word? Yeah, the girl is often said, no, treat your husband as Parameshwar, God. It's fine. And that poor child, that girl, right from childhood has been taught that be careful, sex is dirty, don't let anybody touch you, it's a very sinful thing. And then one day she grows up, gets married to a man whom they say is your God, and guess what God does to her? Sinful. A sinful act. We ourselves have really got the whole philosophy in a twist. So, look at what the Vedic view was. And by the way, let there be no controversy about it. The Vedic view actually said that every child should be fully informed. Our philosophy is so brave. We actually face the truth face to face. We don't hide from facts. Okay? And in our Vedic view, they had taken care of all kind of human emotions and human needs. Even marriage is defined 8 types of marriages, by the way. 8 types of marriages. Manu, you perhaps the most commonly known lawgiver, Yajanvalkya, and Gautam, Rishi Gautam. They all have one way or the other defined. The first type is the Brahma Vivaha. This is the supreme, the best. This is where not only the two individuals, but their families, and not only the family, their group of friends, the whole society has come together to celebrate this union. That is Brahma Vivaha. Then next comes the Prajapatya. This is not the society getting involved, but a smaller ceremony involving the family. And then Deva Vivaha, where only 2 individuals are, not even parents getting involved in it. And then there is Arsha Vivaha, in which some gift is given to the father of the bride, some kind of a bribery, some kind of a commercial deal, has been done. Then there is Gandharva Vivaha, which is a wedding in total secrecy, surrounded in secrecy. Only the 2 individuals know that they are married, nobody else even know about it. Asura Vivaha, where purchase, one of the partners had, a fee has been paid. Rakshas Vivaha, which involves force. It's a forced marriage, that's Rakshas Vivaha. And then finally, Pashach Vivaha, where there is some deceit. It isn't what it seems to be. So there you are. Our rishis actually knew that human beings are capable of doing all this. And they said, yeah, this is really what it is. But you should aim for the top. This human nature, human psychology, all kind of needs, all kind of hungers, desires, including sexual desire, was fully taken into account. And nowadays when youngsters come to us and say, oh, no, not religious, no, I'm not interested in this because I can't do it. I said, look, you have actually not understood our philosophy. Every aspect of our need is actually taken care of. And I will go even further. Be ready to be shocked. Honestly, in the 4th chapter of the book Light of Truth, Satyarth Prakash, written by Swami Dayanand, founder of Arya Samaj. Yeah, he was a reformist, and very many of us have actually benefited from that reform. He devotes that entire chapter on marriage and the relationships, and in there he proposes the term Ni Yoga. Yoga you all know, but this is Ni Yoga. I don't know how many of you actually know about it. Ni Yoga, by the way, Swami Dayanand also did not want child marriage because it is not sanctioned in our, but he was promoting remarriages of widows. Today, it's shameful really, particularly young widows, and they are sent to a city. It's now known as City of Widows in India. Bhagwan Shri Krishna's place, Vrindavan. And it is sad. I have been there and I wanted to talk to people. I wanted to even interview these ladies in white saris. And suddenly these pandas who are looking after them come and stop me. I think it is again a suffering of our society because we distorted our own views about marriage. Yeah, there is nothing in our dharmic tradition, in our Vedic tradition, which stops a widow getting remarried. And there is nothing about child marriage too. But coming back to Ni Yoga, you look at the advancement. People sometimes think, oh, we are backward, our religion. It says that both, it is applicable to both, husband as well as wife. If either one of them goes missing, is lost, or for any reason is not able to fulfill or complete their duties as husband or wife, then they have the right to go and do the Ni Yoga. They stay married, but they can go and produce children with somebody else, often for somebody from within the family. It's there, it's sanctioned. Such was the advance. Nowadays, I think they talk about other means of doing it, or scientific means of doing it, test tubes and goodness knows what all. But in those days, that was allowed, not for sake of sexual pleasures, but it was just a need. That, there was a respect for sexuality of people. Respect, that's the word I'm using. You just need to go and look at places like Gujarat. I have been there. And I spent a couple of days actually studying it. Now, in the West, and most of you perhaps think, oh, are you talking about those temples with erotic images? The ones which depict all kind of sexual postures and all that. Yes, but please look at it carefully. On the outside walls, yes, if there is one line of these sexual imagery, look at the line above and look at the line below. They are statues of gods and goddesses. So what is it that they are trying to tell you? And once you go inside, it's the same male and female images, but this time they are not touching each other. The physical connection has gone. And you go even further inside, even these images disappear. Gradually, from the outer, you go to the inner. From the physical, you go to the emotional and to the spiritual. These are wonderful depictions, in an art form, but it is a philosophy that was presented. And also look at the 7 chakras that we often talk about. Yeah, most of you are aware of the yoga. Yeah, very simply, our body is alive. We have life force in us. But every power, every force needs a center. Like the political center of this country, London. And that power centered in parliament, in prime minister. You can actually find the center of power. So same way, if I ask you, you are alive, yeah? We have life force in us, so where is it centered? Is it in your nails or here? Where is that life force that you know that you have? And it's our view is that it has 7 centers. We call them the chakras. And look at the beauty of it. The first, the Mooladhara, the base chakra, the sex organs, where life is made. Navel chakra, life is sustained. You got to digest. You can't live without eating. Yeah? The solar plexus, the breathing. And then heart, where life is felt. Throat, where life is expressed, where life is understood. You see? And they don't work in isolation. They are all connected. The energy flows right from the bottom to the top and back down again. You cannot just suppress one end and say, no, not here. That doesn't happen. So this is another holistic view of the life force in every human being. And it is recognized and accepted as very sacred. And that is why it should not be misused or abused. Dharmic view, I mentioned in the beginning, is a sacrament. Vivaha we call it. Yeah? There are 16 sacraments, and Vivaha is the 13th in this series of the 16. And let me tell you, it's the most beautiful. It's lovely, it's happy, and it is romantic. And I'll give you a few examples. I'm not, in fact, thank you so much for finding me my future customers, those who wanted to get married, yeah? Exchange of Varmala, where they put the garland, and the prayer that is to be recited at that time. I've got a book here. I'm not going to start to recite prayers in Sanskrit. It explains all these 16 sanskars. But when the garlands are exchanged, the prayer actually says that all the learned people here, yeah, we declare that we are accepting each other voluntarily and willingly. And may, you all bless us such that our 2 hearts merge like the waters of 2 rivers. How romantic. It's not religious. And then the groom goes, sits there, and he's given what is called madhuparka, mixture of yogurt, honey, and the prayers which are recited, they say that let the sweetness of the nature, the sweetness of the winds and the sun and the earth, all that sweetness which is in this, let that sweetness come in our relationship. And the parikramas, by the way, they don't walk around the fire 7 times. It's absolutely wrong. It's rubbish. I don't know who's created it. There are 7 steps you take for each of the 7 vows, but you walk around the parikrama 4 times. Okay? Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha, the 4 objectives of life. You are going on a journey, holding hand. Come, let's fulfill our dharma together. Come, let's enjoy the life together. Come, this is what it is. And the very first mantra, I really, honestly, I just admire it. I don't know, you must have attended many, many weddings. If ever anyone has recited that first mantra the way it is meant to be recited and has ever even explained the meanings in it. First round, when you're holding hands and going around the fire, you're saying, if I am Sa, you are Ma. And if I am Ma, you are Sa. You see the equality. And together we become Sam. In Sanskrit, Sam means balanced. If I am the earth, you are the skies. If I am the skies, you are the earth. If I am the sun, you that's what is that mantra saying. If you are the Rik Veda, it's the book of knowledge, then I am the Sama, which is practical. So it's experiential as well as theoretical. Both. And they say, let us come together on equal grounds, no high, no low. And in the second one, that's even more romantic, where she, it's the bride, is actually, they are parents sitting there as well. So bride's parents are called, because it is shairi, it is poem, similes and metaphors. It says the parents of the bride are like the sun. And the bride is like the rays of the sun, and she is leaving her home, going to the groom who's like the moon, such that the moon can shine. Such ideas are there, and I just want to make you realize that we somehow have stopped listening or understanding the real meanings of our dharmic or the Vedic view of marriage. If we are running away from it, that's because we have allowed distortions to take place. Move away from that distortion. I think the institution of marriage is needed. It's very much needed by all the society. And if it is to survive, then we must go back to our original dharmic view of marriage. Thank you.
Thank you, Navalkantji. Now I will be taking a turn to ask you some questions, if that's okay. Mm-hmm. Brilliant, thank you. I think you all agree that was a really interesting reflection on our question today. And I have a few follow-up questions that I'd like to ask you. So, let me just get my notes. Okay, so you talk a lot about how we have allowed these distortions to happen. And I'd really like to pick that apart. I found that really interesting. So looking at the state of marriage today, and I know you touched on that, kind of commenting on how, and I think we've all been to these sorts of weddings where you see like 3 bottles of wine, but the poor pujari has been left with a pretty bad deal. What else exactly do you think we've lost when we've allowed these distortions to happen, comparing marriage as you see it today compared to how our ancestors practiced it, for instance?
I think I will come back to my view that we have lost the true meaning of relationships between individuals. We have lost what I call spirituality in our life. We have become very physical. We have become very emotional. We have stopped being spiritual. I think this is really what has happened. That's the impact that has had, and not only on marriage, in other relationships as well.
That's a really interesting point. But I think I quoted a statistic earlier that fewer than 3%, no, 30% of all marriages in the UK, and I know that's a UK statistic, are religious ceremonies. So how would you kind of understand that, given your view on marriage? What's your take on that?
I can only quote an Italian couple who were due to get married, and they saw this ceremony that I had conducted, and they came to me and said, "Oh, wish you could conduct our marriage ceremony," because there was no religion in it. It was philosophy. It was guidance. It was increasing the awareness of who really you are and who that other person is, and how both of you are going to work together. That is really what it was all about. And they really, I think they were Italian, and they were going to have some. But you see, sadly, and again, I'm not having a go at any particular religion, but generally what we call so-called traditional or religious marriages actually gave no guidance whatsoever. They do not increase this awareness, It is just a ritual. It is just something that we do, and they just do go through the motions in a very ritualistic way. It doesn't leave any impact on them whatsoever. And that is true with other religious ceremonies as well. It is, as I said, natural laws. There is only one nature. Spirituality, there is only one. And that is it. Yeah. It is universal. Applies to anyone.
Great. Okay. And I had another question, and this was about the different types of marriage which you identified earlier on in your talk. And there are a few, like Rakshas Vivaha and a few others. And you talked also about the kind of the perfect state of a marriage. So you kind of connect on the emotional, the physical, and the spiritual level. So my question to you is, we're talking about, is marriage dying? But given that, scholars identified Rakshas Vivaha and some other less palatable forms of marriage, was it not dying then? Has it not always been dying? Because there have been some people who have let that distortion happen in one way or another.
Yeah. I think it was Rishi Shvetaketu who actually, if you read Upanishads, I've studied about 11 of them, and it's Rishi Shvetaketu who is given the credit of establishing institution of marriage. Because they had studied before, perhaps there was a time, as human race evolved, that people just didn't know what marriage was, and and so on. So it was through process of evolution, and someone somewhere must have come up with this idea of institution of marriage, and the credit is given to Rishi Shvetaketu, who had explained that, look, if there is going to be a sense of order, if you were going to perform certain duties, if you're going to create next generation of people to come and look after you, then you have to have, let's just all agree. And by the way, when relationships take place, when you do anything, forget about marriage, anything, like recently, just today, whole day long, I have been chairing a committee, an international committee on nuclear standards. I know it's nothing to do with marriage, but Russians are writing their own codes, Chinese are writing, and they're saying, oh, we want to sell nuclear reactors here, there has to be this wheeling and dealing and all that. And you know what? They're all saying, but before you do anything else, we all must agree certain codes and standards. So anything you do, even if you go to buy a shirt, said, what's your collar size? Anything you do, there is a certain, regulation, certain standard, certain code. So human relations are very, very complex. And they had to be some sort of an institution, some kind of a codification. And that is really was the idea by Rishi Shvetaketu. And I would still stand by his original ideas, which took account of all kind of human nature. Please, Hindus never shy away from the truth. If you read Mahabharata, you will come across all kind of characters, good as well as bad. They were also human beings doing awful things to each other. But we said, yeah, fine, this happens. This happens in this world. We are living in this because we are humans. We are not gods. And humans are capable of doing divine as well as horrible things, as we know. So you can't just shut your eyes and say, no, this can't. No. It says, sorry, these things happen. Absolutely.
I think, again, that's a really interesting point. I think one thing I'd like to pick up on is that you talk about codification, but I think one thing that we're seeing today is that people are kind of defining marriage for themselves. It's a very personal thing. You've had experiences of young people coming to you saying, oh no, I want this, I want that. And you have kind of said, well, I'm not sure you quite understand. So my question to you is the fact that people are they're kind of carving out that room for themselves to define marriage and define their marriage for themselves without kind of moving away from that codification. Is that not keeping marriage alive in a sense, or are we still kind of seeing it being eroded?
Okay. So there are two things, marriage as a relationship and marriage as a ceremony. The ceremony which takes place on the big day, 1, 2, 3 hours and all that kind of thing. It is to be celebrated. There is nobody says that you shouldn't. Yes, invite people, and all that. That actually is in the definition of Brahma Vivaha, that you are actually celebrating this relationship in front of not only the family but the whole group of friends and all that. That is not stopped in any way as long as it is done sensibly. But yes, how you want to celebrate, what kind of color, what saris you want to wear, what you want to do. People do have their personal choices and they want to turn it into a memorable day. They will do things that, otherwise they perhaps won't, which is fair enough. I will never ever stand in a way of happiness or celebration. But some common sense needs to be maintained to see what is more important. Where I object to is where the physical becomes more important, where all the decoration, the color, the food, the music, they take a higher priority than the real message. What is it that, when that ceremony is going on, that's the spiritual, the sacredness of that has gone. And that is really what I object to. I'm not objecting to them having, inviting people and all that. That's great. By all means, have that fun. As I said, physical is as important as emotional, but it is the spiritual aspect. That is the bit which is missing.
Brilliant, thank you. So how you talk about how that we need to return back to this original state, this perfect state of marriage, and there are people in the room here today who, want to get married. I think it's something which is a very joyous part of the human existence.
Absolutely.
So how can we bring it back to that state? I mean, as young people.
So I would say knowledge, try to educate yourself. There is a lot of literature out there. As I said, the organization, the charity that I work for is Vishwa Hindu Parishad, the World Council of Hindus. They have published books. There are other people as well out there, so become aware. But most importantly, ask yourself the question, I'm entering into this relationship. I'm going to celebrate this relationship. Yes, there are emotions involved. Yes, I want it to look beautiful. But beyond it, I want it to be spiritual. And that's really what you should be seeking. And that spiritualness is something I can't describe to you, I can't give to you. You only have to experience it in a way that you will never forget. Okay?
Some interesting points for the audience to chew on there when you're asking your questions. And I'd like to ask one more question.
Sure.
We've talked about how, and I've raised a point earlier, that perhaps marriage is being kept alive because people are defining it for themselves. But given your points about marriage and, the three, the physical, the emotional, and the spiritual, do we not merit another kind of form of codification for these other types of relationships, which are still kind of valid in their own sense, but perhaps can't be understood as marriage in the traditional sense, which we're talking about today?
So just clarify, other kind like
So
people are living together?
no, not so much that, but I talked earlier about how people are defining these relationships for themselves. So let's say, for instance, they may be driven more by the emotional and the physical and less so by the spiritual. Is there not a different form of codification for that kind of relationship?
Look, good luck to those who want to just live by emotions, and good luck to those who just want to live by the body. I can only remind them of one eternal natural law, and that is the body is going to change. The emotions are going to change. Simple. So do you want to base a relationship on something that you know is going to change? Someone is looking beautiful today, yeah? And a few years later, not beautiful anymore. What? A relationship should be such that it keeps on deepening, it gets on better and better, irrespective of what the body and the emotions are doing. Choice is yours. I mean, if you want to live like that, then yes, that relationship will end when that emotion or that body changes. And it will end in one of those statistics that you read earlier on. Yeah, that's what is happening.
So do you think there is, given the situation that we're in where we're even asking the question, is marriage dying? Do you see there being, this is my last question, do you see there being any kind of viable alternative if marriage continues to erode?
Yeah, as I said, the alternative is to increase the awareness in our younger generation. Yeah, and not only just the younger generation, even parents and those uncles and aunts who often give the advice, for them to become aware that, look, this isn't just, two people coming together to have some bit of a fun and all this. No, it is there is much deeper angle to it. Yeah, get to know it, and then when the ceremony takes place, make sure that aspect is brought about. Think about it, put it into practice, and you will see that there will be more and more and more of everlasting, joyful marriages.
I think we can all agree with that. Thank you, Navalkantji, for that. I would now like to open the floor to our reflectors.
Thank you, Navalkantji, for your great thoughts. There is a very famous saying, everybody thinking to give a better world to their children, but hardly someone thinking to give some better children to the world. So, I do remember, most of you know, 5 years back, there were some riots happened in the UK, and it went for the whole week. That time our Prime Minister was on the holidays, and after 3 days he back, and after a week then the riots got control. And then there was a discussion in the parliament, and the Prime Minister had to say something about what happened, why it happened, what he's going to do. So I still remember the speech, the statement of the David Cameron in the parliament. He mentioned the 3 reasons why this happening with the society. Why this happening? The three reasons he mentioned. One was the family system is totally broken because the development of the children happening in totally unstable atmosphere of the family. The second thing he mentioned, the education system can't produce the values in the society. And the third, I don't remember. But this shows the reality of the society. I was reading something and it says a beautiful quote. Before the marriage, two people look at each other, but after the marriage, they both look at the one direction. But I see nowadays what happens. Before the marriage, two people look at each other, and after the marriage, both looking at their mobile phones, and no one know each other's password. So that's the reality of the society. When I think about is marriage dying, I think even the topic is not great. It's the values dying in the society and the impact happening on the marriage. Even the society is not dying, society is changing. The values are dying. We can see the whole society as a person. And in the life of a person, as the different phase comes, the whole society going through a phase, particularly in the Western world. So obviously, when the values are dying, we can see impact everywhere. We can see the relationship between the parents and the children. We can see the relationship between the teachers and the students. We can see the problems, the grooming, the drugs, and lots of problem around. So when the values are dying in the society, the impact obviously will happen on the marriage. And I do agree, as you mentioned, when the whole society, the aims and objectives becomes sensual pleasure, then what the end result you will expect? Human is not the five senses only. We see human, and the Hindu philosophy, VM is the Hindu platform to discuss the ideas. The Hindu philosophy says is not only the body, the five senses, but beyond the mind, beyond the intellect, and beyond the Atma. So the more and more deeper a person will become, the more and more happy the life will become. So though you mentioned many times about the way we conduct the ceremony, I personally think that's a little incident in a long life. Even a better ceremony can't sort out the things. It's the person, the people. If the people are right, maybe without ceremony, their marriage life will be happy. But if the people are not right, then how many ceremony we conduct? Maybe the 6 months, the impact will be there, and then again the forget. So how we create the better people, the better human beings in the society, that's the most important thing. Marriage is just, so what I can see is a phase in the human society, particularly in the Western world, going through a phase. Maybe a phase will go to 50 year, 100 year, 200 year or more. But end of the day, the society will realize. I can see a picture where the whole society on a huge big roundabout with the 10 exit, and they don't know which is the right exit, and they're going round and round and round, and most of them take the wrong exit. Then there is they can't come back. Maybe someone finds some side roads to reach to the right exit, maybe the second marriage or third marriage. But this is the way the society going on right now. So this is the society going through a phase. Maybe it take 50 year or 100 year or 200 year. It has to be right, because there is no other way. Even there is no Hindu wedding ceremony, the society will come back on the right way, because it is the need of the life, need of the society. So the less time it will take, the better will be for the society. That's only we can do. I have a question for you, please. So this is not the problem with the Hindus only. This is the problem of the whole society, everywhere, even more with the others than to Hindus. And the change should happen from a very right age, as you said, even with the children, to give the right mindset about the life or whatever. if the education department in this country, they ask you what you recommend to the student age to teach them so they can see something life in a deeper way, what you will recommend?
For children, it has to be something very simple, and I would actually introduce yoga in a way that helps a child to become self-aware. You see, as a child's psychology is often, they are out getting attracted by different things. A moment of calmness, a moment of self-reflection, people call it mindfulness or meditation, gradually, depending on the age the child is at, that can be because it increases the awareness of, I'm not just a body, I'm not just a mind, I'm something else. And if that comes, then all those things that you have said become important. It's just total lack of awareness. A lot of people I have come to know are not even aware of who they are. They're just reacting, continuously reacting, and without ever taking a moment to actually look deep inside. So that's what I would recommend.
I think that's a really interesting kind of concept that you touched on also about how our values in society are changing and the impact that's having on marriage. And again, another thought that I'm going to throw out there to the audience to perhaps think on when you're asking your questions. But I'd also like to introduce our third reflector, Heenaji, who is joining us. So welcome to Heenaji. She will also be giving her thoughts on our question today. But Sumitji, I'm going to hand the floor over to you.
Yeah. So, namaste everyone, and thank you so much, Dr. Prinja, for your kind words and giving us a lot more information about the scriptures that we actually have are much more progressive than what we are today, and which is quite, at least in my case, very revealing in terms of how. What Khajuraho actually stands for, and over time people have questioned as to what basis the Hindu society was based on by just looking at the temple, and so I think that was really useful to understand, really helpful to understand how widows were allowed to get married and child marriages were actually not part of the scriptures at all. So I think that's all great. My qualification to talk about this is just 11 years of marriage, and I'm still here with a few black hair still there. So but in terms of the practicalities of today's world and how marriages, the kind of cycle they go through, and I think you rightly mentioned about. To begin with, it is about body and emotions and all of that. But I'd like to understand, how do you actually practically take it to the next stage in terms of connecting the two souls? And what I have seen so far in terms of our wedding is, or the marriage, not just the wedding ceremony as such, which is really very important for a lot of men and women. It was for my wife as well. And so what I have seen is that day, the wedding day, is really important, the way it's conducted. And it tends to be driven by the needs of the bride more so than anything else. But then, and then you have a fantastic time for the first few months, maybe a year as well, traveling and all that. And that's when the kind of reality kind of kicks in, because your perception of marriage or wedding or the relationship is very different, and the first 2 or 3 years are really very difficult to kind of come to terms with each other's way of living, and gradually, as things kind of settle in, you start kind of going through the ups and downs of life together. And what I've noticed, especially, is that when we did that, the support that was there and those memories about how things became very difficult. The only support system was your partner at that time. Those experiences have kind of entwined you into being with each other more so than anything else. So, but I'd be very keen to understand as to how would you, at a spiritual level, actually connect even before you think of getting married to somebody. How would you approach that?
It's a very good question. And I was asked this question in a different context, but the answer is the same. I was talking to soldiers of British Armed Forces who had seen action and had returned back to Britain, and some of them were not in good state of mind. And the idea was it was a spiritual retreat, and I gave similar kind of, body, mind. And this young soldier came to me and said, well, you've seen this age, and I am only 21, and I've recently got married, I've got a wife, I've got a kid, I've got 100 things to worry about. And, there are times when I get so annoyed, and I shout, I get angry, and then she does this, and so on. And what should I be doing? Similar sort of, thing. And I told him that the very first thing you got to do, again coming back to self-awareness, is that when you get in state of anxiety or fear or anger, do you know that you are angry? Do you know that you are afraid? I said half of your problem will go away. I'm not saying don't be angry. I'm not saying, keep laughing all the time. No. We are humans. We will react to situations. But if deep inside, you know that this is only my mind that is creating this fear. It's only my mind that is creating this jealousy. It's only my mind which is making me, as long as you are aware of it, that deep inside there is something else, but it's only my mind making me do it. I said half the battle is won, because you still remain in control. If you are angry and you know you are angry, it's much better than being angry and not even knowing what is it that you're doing. So I would recommend this technique to everyone, marriage, not marriage, whatever else, in your work life. There will be situations where your mind will really make you, so tense or angry and whatever else, and your body may just react accordingly. But, just think of that third level, that no, hang on, there is something above it. I'm not going to let my mind take total control of me. I know that this is the state of my mind, and that is why a lot of people call it mindfulness. So don't let your mind be full of these things, but you should be mindful of those things. You understand?
Thank you for that.
I really like that, because I have been having a few conversations just in my own personal life with friends and family about understanding how people operate, and I definitely get that from what you've just said. And I think kind of understanding how another person works, how they think, and thinking and understanding how you operate is really key before you kind of jump into such a big commitment that is marriage. And I think it is such a huge relationship, and perhaps one of the reasons why we're seeing the stats that I quoted at the beginning of this talk is because perhaps we don't quite understand that it's a commitment. And I think that is where your point about the third layer really kind of comes in. And I'll certainly walk away from this conversation reflecting on that, and hopefully everyone else will too. But Hinaji, finally I'd like to kind of open the floor up to you to reflect on your own experiences, please.
And namaste. So I'm in the wedding industry for 15 years. So is marriage dying? I hope not, because my business will die. So I have two angles to this. So the first one is, I like to pick up on your point just now you've just made. I find that people, and as the generation's going, the tolerance, the understanding is getting very thin. They're entering a marriage and they think it's going to be like how they were dating. And some get to the engagement, they have mini moons now before the main honeymoon. They go on mini moons, they go on holiday and everything, and they come back, oh, by the way, can we cancel the mandap? So the lack of understanding, lack of tolerance, I find, is from what mine is to the generations going down is a lot less. And they don't understand the importance of it. A lot more nuclear families are developing. They don't want to stay with what they classify as dustbins, which are the parents, right? So, they want the financial stability. So they go on to careers, they go on to, secondments and everything. So by the time they get married, they're 30 plus. And as you're getting older and older, you're stuck in your way, she's stuck in her way. The understanding of living together, there's going to have to be a level of compromise. And I get what you're saying that, there has to be, to get to that stage of spirituality, there has to be that give and take, but I don't find that's happening now. And, it's unfortunate. The very first marriage we done 15 years ago, it was a couple. 22, 23-year-old came, and after they left, I said to Niggs, oh God, these guys are really young. But they were so in love and everything. We go, okay, it's our first order anyway. So we'd done their marriage, and within a year, we found out they had divorced. And all because the girl's cupboard space, she didn't have enough room from what her background was to what his background was. So I find, I know what you're saying about physical, the emotion, but the generation, they don't understand the spirituality of it. And that doesn't come to their mind until they get to a stage in their life where things change, where kids may come or they may have an incident, life-changing incident. That spirituality will come. But it's not going to come to the forefront straight away. So I don't know, there is no right or wrong in this. But I just find trying to engage, it's like my daughter who's 10, she's doing yoga and mindfulness now, but we didn't have all that. It's coming, but there's a big generation gap. And that brings me to my point that, I have a good bunch of friends who are single and they're doing some amazing work and they don't want to be married. But does that mean there's going to be a gap there? Is marriage dying? Yes, it's dying for that way, but they're doing some amazing work. So where do you find the balance?
Okay. Does the fact that marriage is dying free us up to do things which are of immense value? And
I've given one example of Swami Dayanand. He never married. Because if you can definitely, I mentioned to you, marriage is a relationship you enter because you want to fulfill those 5 great duties. But if you can, without getting married, fulfill something which you couldn't have done otherwise, like India's Prime Minister right now is another example, and so on. There are many roles that you enter into, and suddenly those become so big that your own, priorities can take the second seat. So fine, but I hope that not everyone gets into it for a very simple reason. I was watching a TV program and there was a lady who says, oh, no, I hate kids. I don't want to get married. I don't want... And I don't know why people, but I just wanted to ask her the question that when you get old, God forbid something happens to you, who's going to drive that ambulance? Who's going to look after you? Who's going to cook for you? Who's going to, you see, there is, so you need, it is inevitable, you need the new generation of people. This is, again, a natural law. You cannot, you just need to procreate, you have to have that And this is one of the reasons why institution of marriage was created, to do it in a orderly fashion, and to make sure that the next generation, as the point was made earlier on by Chandrakantji, to give good children back to the society. That's where institution of marriage is needed. So but again, I wouldn't say that if somebody decides not to get married, but provided they've got bigger things to do, good luck. So please don't go away with a view that the dharmic view is very much, one straight line. No. We are flexible, as long as there is something which is better. And I want to end by explaining a beautiful meaning of life. You all know the Gayatri mantra, which starts, and the very first 3 words only, Om, Bhu, Bhava, Swa. Bhu matlab in English means being, existence. This exists, yeah? But there is a difference between the table's existence and my existence. Table will stay there. I am going to change. So I will become something else. Bhuva means to become. Being, becoming. You are, and because you are alive, you are going to change. Given. Please don't even think about it. You are alive, therefore you are going to change. Change for what? Swaha, blissful. You are going to become better.
That's a really nice note to end on. Thank you. So thank you to Navakantji for giving his thoughts on our question. And now I would like to open the floor to everyone here to ask your questions. I already have a hand up. Great. We don't have a roving mic, unfortunately, so please ask your questions as loudly as possible, and then I will repeat them. This is just to make sure that the camera picks it up. And please also keep your questions brief. Thank you.
So I'd be really interested in hearing what other women have to say about the institution of marriage and whether it's dying or not, because my experience of it and why I feel like it probably is dying in the traditional sense is a very gendered experience, and the way that I am being pressured in certain ways by my family to tick boxes. And it's like, and I'm sure a lot of people, women, especially women, men as well, can agree that, like, as soon as you finish your degree, which you're supposed to do, that's what you're supposed to do, as soon as you've done that, after you graduate, it's like, okay, the next thing is to get married. It's like the next hurdle. And I just think that there's a lot of heaviness of casteism, sexism and racism that still exists within our families and communities. And I was just wondering that, I know we keep going, like we say that like the young generation needs to get in touch with spirituality more. I personally feel like I am doing that, but I just think that these pressures to conform to an institution, to conform to a time, you have to get married by a certain age, are quite limiting. So I just wanted to know, like, preferably also from the women, that how you feel about that.
Sorry, just to pick up on that, I find that's really family-based. Sometimes it's like your cousin's getting married, your brother's getting married, your other massie's getting married, and you're the last one left. So there's a lot of pressure on you. And the mums feel it more because what they're going to say to the neighbours, what they're going to say to the society, but they feel they can't go to a community event because there's only one question remaining. It's really hard to change the parents' generation. I'm hoping I'm going to be a totally different mum to my parents, my kids. I can't change my mum. You're going to have to work with them and this is what I was saying, that going to work, priorities work, establishing yourself, and then come 30, people are looking into marriage. Some consider it as, oh, that's quite old. But you're going to have to work and talk to your parents and say, well, this is my aspirations, what do you think? And come to a middle point, saying, if I'm going to be 25, can I do this? And then by 27, I'll consider marriage.
To reframe that, what do you think of everything these women have said in the context of what we're discussing today? Is this a sign that marriage is dying or that it's stopped working?
But I think your point was essentially the pressure that the family puts on young people. And I think it's not only on, to be fair, on girls, even boys are subjected to the same expectations from parents and so on. So let me just give you one advice that I normally give to most of the youngsters is, please look at marriage as just a natural progression in your life. Okay? As I mentioned, there are 16 sanskars from the time of conception, not even birth, conception till the day you die, 16th, okay? This is the 13th. So it will happen. As I said, boo, baba, swa, yeah? Take it as something, a flow in your life. Yes, there are expectations from parents and they get a bit, anxious, oh, do it now. But the word and the other bit of advice is with whom? And I would say compatibility. That's the most important one. Compatibility and some others, we compromised. No. What we are looking for is harmonization. Yeah, not reconciliation or compromise. No. Let your life flow. Know yourself and let it flow. And it will come. Let it be part of it. Don't create barriers like not now. You never know.
Yeah, of course, if you'd like to. Go ahead.
Let me make one thing again very, very clear. In our, the rishis, in our Vedic tradition, in the Dharmic tradition, they have prohibited marriages with certain type of partners. And you know which one? They call them sarpind, which means close blood relations. And in fact, I was very much surprised that British government actually wanted, there are certain communities where this marriage of cousins and others take place, and their children are grown with genetic defects. This is very, and they've started some educational projects on it. But this was known. This is the only prohibition. Other than that, it is the guna, the qualities, again, compatibility. So again, we must go back to those values that we held. Yeah.
So I think that's a really interesting point about how, it kind of transcends gender, which is, I think, given the times, is a really important thing to remember. Going on to more questions. Navalkantji, what do you think of that? There are lots of people here who I'm assuming, like me, are in their 20s. How would you kind of respond to those stereotypes in the context of what we're discussing today?
I want to share a personal experience of dealing with stereotypes. Me and my wife, who's I'm missing because she's in India, we were visiting our relatives in India, one of those stereotypes. And something happened, and they were talking about widows. And my wife, just being, by the way, she shares the same views as I do. And she said, I've told Naval, that's my first name, that if something happens to me, he should find a good partner and marry. And same applies to me as well. Gosh, her relatives who were sitting around her, you should have seen their faces. No way. And the matter became so heated that her brother-in-law, one of the stereotypes, and got so heated, and he said, I today prohibit my wife to remarry in case I die. This, that, and it became absolutely crazy. So how do you deal with these stereotypes? It's very difficult. Only thing is, you state that, look, common sense prevails. This is really what it is. And once again, as I keep on mentioning, our philosophy isn't one of those straight jackets which are put on and that's it, cast in stone kind of thing. Very flexible. It's based on natural laws and it applies as you go along. We keep on modifying it. We are flexible. We are progressive. But as long as you go back to these original ideas, which are as progressive, I think you perhaps picked it up, that it's as progressive as an impact, perhaps even more progressive than what we care to know. But there is one point that I want to make, and which no one actually raised, is I kept on saying, we have changed, we have distorted, but nobody actually asked me the question, why do I think that we have actually distorted it all? Why have we become stereotyped? So, you are a student of philosophy from Oxford, is that right?
University of London and
Oxford. Second President of India, Dr. Radhakrishnan, was a lecturer of philosophy here. Yeah? And he was taken back to India to become the president. And in his 2 volumes of Indian philosophy, towards the end, the concluding chapter 11, and it's not me, it's him. Yeah? I'll just read it out, and I guess it will give you the answer as to why we have become what we have become. The political changes brought in by the establishment of Mohammedan supremacy forced men's minds into conservative mold. The Mohammedan conquest, with its propagandist work, and later the Christian missionary movement, attempted to shake the stability of Hindu society. The Hindu, in the face of clash of cultures, fortified himself, his society, mistrusting reason, and weary of argument, flung itself passionately into the arms of an authority which stamped all free questioning as sin. This is why we moved away from the Vedic or the Dharmic traditions.
Any thoughts? Oh, we have a hand up. And I think I saw... Okay, so I'm going to go to this gentleman. If someone is dying and they have the option of marrying someone who's healthy, what's the thought process that goes behind that? Is it ethical or right for them to do that? And I think I'd like to bring it back, if it's okay, to the 3 kind of layers almost, I'm going to call them layers of marriage, which Navalkanji presented earlier. Thoughts on that?
So, firstly, there should be no deceit. There should be an absolute, open, honest relationship. So the other partner knows exactly what's going on. Yeah? So it depends on the 2 partners and the relationship they want to enter into. Yeah, it's as simple as that. As long as it is done in that sense. Secondly, the partner themselves, because I did bring up the concept of Ni-Yoga. In our sort of older Vedic traditions, that actually did happen. You all know about Mahabharata, Vyasa, and many examples where the king himself could not, due to his illness and others, have children, but his 2 wives conceived through the Niyoga and all this. But it was done with absolutely honest and full understanding. That is the level of relationship which is where you go beyond the mind, where there is no jealousy left anymore. But if we can find partners who can reach that level, why not? This is my personal view. I know there are many, many Hindus who believe in stars and Kundalini and all that, but no, I don't have, neither do my children, nor do my wife. It is just something, but I am an absolute fan of astronomy, and our ancient traditions of understanding the world that we live in. But whether it will have an effect on your marriage is something I personally don't believe in.
Thank you. So just to clarify that question, does the Hindu understanding of marriage need to be reframed in a legal context to fit with the times, given the fact that there are communities who are fighting for the right to marry?
The Vedic definition of marriage needs to change. It is a relationship between man and woman, Shiva and Shakti, as I explained to you before. Okay, that is how it is, because there are certain biological functions, emotional as well as spiritual functions which are specified. But in terms of the legal, like when we say marriage in a legal term, that is like a partner who shares the same property, has, and all that kind of thing. So why can't two women live together, or as partners, or two men live together? Fine. I mean, if a law needs to be changed in this country for legally for them to do all, benefit from all those, like taxation, your partner gets more tax relief and all that kind of thing, that's fine. I have no issues there. But we should not drag the Hindu view, because it was established long time ago, and it is based on what I call natural laws. So I don't think no law in any country can actually change the law of nature. So law of nature is law of nature. No amount of legality can ever change that.
Brilliant, thank you for that. We have time for one more question only, and because we're wrapping up, just please keep it brief. What is the Vedic understanding of the word soulmate? Does it look a little bit more like teacher, perhaps? And what are your thoughts on that?
I actually don't like the word soulmate. I mentioned the word soul, but I can take the point. Brihad Aranyak Upanishad is one of the largest Upanishad, in which Yajnavalkya gives one of the most beautiful explanation of this relationship, what we call soulmate. He actually had 2 wives. In those days, rishis used to have multiple wives, and he was very rich, because he will take part in debates where the kings will actually put prize money on the winner, and he was so clever, he will always win. Yeah, there are many of his debates against Gargi and so on. But one day, he decides that it's time for him to take sannyas, give up the world. So he calls his 2 wives and said, okay, take half the cows, divide this gold, take this, that, another, divides his property into the half, and I am off. So his younger wife, oh, good, great, yes, and his elder wife, she says, hang on, you promised to share everything with me. He said, yes, dear. So I want the share of what you're going out for now. And then the 2 have the conversation. So who are you? Yeah, and he tells him, and this is the most beautiful definition of soulmate or husband-wife relationship. He says that a husband, it's talking about himself, loves his wife not for the sake of the wife. Oh, you're beautiful, you're attracting me. No. It is for the sake of the self. By that self, I mean the capital S, the Atma, the soul. That you have actually become part. I have appreciated my own self so much that I see myself in you. Yeah? So you remember that life energy, the cycle, the 7 chakras I was talking about? It's very, very difficult for an individual to actually know, because sadly whatever we know today, either we have seen it, touched it, tasted it, but these senses are designed to look outward. Our eyes can never see what's inside us. Skin touches outside, hearing from outside. So how do I then know my real self? And this is where a soulmate comes in. Yeah, you can see them, they can see you. You use your senses of that interplay, and you get to know yourself. Yajnavalkya in Brihadaranyaka Upanishad.
That's a really lovely thought for us to end on. I'm afraid we will have to end there. So I'm going to hand over to Kishanji to wrap up. A huge thank you again to Navalkantji and to all of you and our reflectors for your questions today. It's been a great discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Devikaji, and I'm sure you agree that was a really interesting, thought-provoking manthan on marriage and the concept of it. We explored the 3 layers of marriage. We have explored the need to be conscious on the physical, emotional, and spiritual needs of marriage, and the need to use spirituality to sustain a healthy relationship within marriage. There appear to be many obstacles to the institution of marriage as a concept, including the issue of society not being taught about the true philosophy of marriage. And today we have started only a first step of a discussion of a manthan that can last for centuries. No doubt we have now the tools to frame the institution of marriage in a philosophical and dharmic context, with our dharma forever being flexible and adaptable to the concept of marriage and its changing needs. So the questions you have to ask yourself, I guess, is should we redefine the concept of marriage? Should we reconsider the institution of marriage? Or can the institution of marriage survive with better principles? These are questions for us, of course, to continue discussing. So we would like to thank Professor Navalkanji Prinja for coming all the way from Manchester for a great manthan today. So thank you very much for sharing really valuable thoughts. I'd like to thank Devika Jinnah for her chairing today. It was fantastic to engage the debate. Thank you to BPP University, and of course thank you to all of you for being a great audience and participating in manthan today. We would like to give a special thanks to very important people, and that is our well-wishers. They are the lifeblood of the Vichar Manthan team. So our well-wishers contribute small amounts of money regularly, which allow us to organise these events that we hold today. So I do urge all of you to really consider carefully about this, to go to our desk and speak to, I think, Ria, if you can, who can tell you more about how you can support us. We ask you to contribute through a standing order, but we would really value your support because these are very important discussions to have within our society, within our community, and to progress us as individuals. May I also request that you also like us on Facebook. We are active on social media, and watch all of our videos previously on Vichar Manthans. So do visit our website, which is vicharmanthan.org. So I look forward to seeing all of you soon to our next Vichar Manthan discussion. And thank you and pranam.